All right, welcome everyone to today's virtual community event. Our topic today is succeeding with culturally diverse Agile teams. We have several panelists. If you want to go to the next page. Quite a big roster today, actually. We have Justin Tatil, Mariano Ovoletti, Carlos Romero, myself, Erica Menendez, Olatunde Aku, I still stumbled, I'm sorry. Olatunde Adekunle, Eric Lindgren, and Quincy Jordan. Go by first names here. We are a global company that's located across 6 countries. We were founded in the year 2000, and we have about 3,000 consultants. We also have 3 different lines of service with us. We have Innovate, Build, and Run. And then I'll hand it over to Quincy to talk about and explain how everything's going to work today.
All right, thanks, Erica. All right, so our AgileThought Virtual Community, we very much appreciate you taking out time to join us today. We are looking forward to having a nice, robust conversation around succeeding with culturally diverse Agile teams. So the flow for today will go as such. We will define success in the context of culturally diverse teams. We will also define what we are meaning in the context of cultural diversity. We will have the panel to openly discuss topics. And then we will also provide some opportunity for some Q&A, maybe comments. The comments will just strictly be in the chat. We may comment on the comments, but we also ask that you put any of your questions in the chat as well. We will time box each topic to 7 minutes, including the Q&A per topic. And if we have additional time, we have additional topics that we will add in as well. So the session will be recorded. It is currently being recorded, so it can be shared with others that may be facing similar challenges. You are complicit by your continued participation today. So success and cultural diversity. All right, so for context, when we're saying success, we're saying the ability to respectfully and harmoniously work together to accomplish a desired outcome. And when we are saying cultural diversity, we're saying a variation of customs, habits, behaviors, and norms. All right, so now we're going to dig into our first topic. And the way that we wanted to do this, we really wanted to kind of invite the public into how we may discuss topics such as succeeding with cultural diverse teams and so forth. So it's almost like you're able to be a fly on the wall in one of our discussions, but you can also ask questions in the chat as well. All right, so our first topic here, decision-making in culturally diverse Agile teams. All right, so panel, we had some discussion about this. What are some of the thoughts around there?
I can
I'll go first.
All right,
you go first, Eric.
No, you go.
Yeah, it's okay. So I think that the first thing that comes to mind when we're talking about, for me, decision making in culturally diverse Agile teams is, that there's some of the cultures, as you have over there, Quincy, that by nature and the way that they're raised and the way that they're brought up, they do expect to be told what to do. We discussed that, and again, people can read through the 4 bullet points. And in a team environment, the challenge that I always see very repeatedly is that it hinders collaboration. Because if you're already expected to be told what to do and things of that sort, it kind of like it puts a little bit of a stop on creative thinking and being able to express yourself and things of that nature. So that's kind of like what comes up to mind to me at first sight And for me personally, it's just recognizing when people are used to different management structures and ways of working, trying to identify those early on and just try to fill the gap.
And Eric,
Eric?
you had a comment or something that you wanted to share.
Yeah, so what I was just going to mention is I just spent 2 years in Sweden, and decision making there is very collaborative. There's not one person telling other people what to do. In fact, they will discuss things at length to the point of making you crazy until they get some kind of consensus. So it's really, you know, it's really interesting to see how decisions are made in different cultures.
Yes, it's important to when I'm thinking about specifically or specific examples of Scrum, for example, when we have team members of not only the USA but other cultures, that everybody's under the understanding there that we are a single team, that we all have the same weight, and that we make decisions together as a team. That not because somebody's the Scrum Master, and because of course as a Scrum Master you don't make a decision alone. The whole team makes a decision, and that the title, for example, of Scrum Master doesn't give you more of a hierarchy over the team as a whole. That's well, I would say most of the time, just as coaching has to be let known openly to the team, and sometimes even it has to. We have to, as Scrum Masters or as team members, to make it clear to the team that we are all on the same page in that respect. We're all team members. From a hierarchy perspective, there is no hierarchy. When team members sometimes coming in from other parts of the world think that there is a hierarchy within in this case, within the Agile Scrum team.
I like how, Carlos, you bring that up, the Scrum aspect of it, right? So one of the values in Scrum is courage. And I think what we're touching on right now is the variation of courage that may come from these different cultures, right? So cultures that are more submissive, that are more, that have the tendency to be told or to listen, right? To follow in a sense, as opposed to question what they're being asked of, right? It takes courage to come forward to say, hey, no, I think this, we may want to consider something else, whatever is being discussed. So I think that's what we're touching on is, Eric is pointing out, Sweden, they're talking through ad nauseam to make a decision. So there's benefit there that everybody's trying to become, on the same page over a decision. And the other extreme is you're letting one person basically make the call, right? So where does the team want to be? I think is what we're trying to highlight. So questioning, what are some of the techniques? I think we talked about some techniques. So if you guys wanted to touch on that, on how we can encourage folks to come forward, have courage to speak up. What are some of the techniques you guys have used?
Yeah, so I found the best way is actually through one-on-ones, especially when it's someone that's used to command and control, or, there's a manager on the team culture, because if they're looking at you as the manager and you tell them to talk in a meeting, then they're going to make something up, but they're not going to feel comfortable. It's not going to be genuine. So kind of one-on-one tends to bring people more out of their shell more genuinely, and make them more of a collaborative team that's not continuously depending on you.
One-on-ones are great, and also have a team conversation and remind the team of the three the three different. You have the PO, you have the devs, and including QA, you have the Scrum. And I'm I guess focusing a little bit on Scrum right now because that's what I'm doing. But say have them open up within first, since we're right now are all virtual, have them come to a point in a few days comfortable enough to turn on their cameras. A lot of people don't like to have their cameras on. Get them to a point and get the team open, comfortable enough to open up their cameras. Then at some point, once they open up their cameras, then start asking questions, just normal questions. Where's everybody from? Let me introduce myself. Not talk about business at all. Where's everybody from? Just a 15-minute session. Start with that. And that will start making the team feeling comfortable. It doesn't matter if you don't speak the language or not. One of the important things, and I think we have it here, is you don't listen. We have it. Listen to them. You don't have to yell at them if you don't speak their language, but really listen to them. That makes a huge difference. That's a technique. And I'll let my colleagues here go with that. Let you talk here a little bit about other techniques.
All right, we're actually going to move to the next topic. That's our time box, 7 minutes. So now we're on to our next topic, which is show empathy. Use techniques to ease your colleagues from other cultures. What do we mean by that?
All right, I'll go first again. It always happens. I mean, every time that I open my mouth, I'm stopping somebody else from speaking, so my apologies. So when it comes to showing empathy and using techniques, I think that the first thing that we probably want to do is make sure that we do have enough psychological safety for people to open up, right? And then obviously once you have that set up, you can definitely show empathy and understand the reasons why people the way that they are. We just need to create an atmosphere where everybody's welcome. And again, it's understanding a little bit where everybody's coming from. Carlos was mentioning a minute ago, some people don't want to get on camera, and just understanding the reason why at times helps a lot. Like I had a few teams in the past in which they either didn't have the proper background. Some people that were working from a particular environment that they didn't feel comfortable showing, right? Or they might have kids in the background. Some people actually work with babies in their hand. Like it just happens. Particularly with COVID nowadays, right? Like you were saying, Quincy, like you might have a dog barking in the background, your kid crying, who knows? So just creating that psychological safety environment for people to be able to come as they are and be welcoming of those things and being accepting of those. I think that shows a great deal of empathy. And again, it probably in a different way, it just enhance the people interaction over process and tools at times in terms of like, hey, let's make sure that we interact in a way that is beneficial for everybody. And to be able to do that, we set the stage, I particularly set the stage, we're trying to create that psychological safety and bring, everybody on the same page in terms of like, hey, it's okay. We understand what we're going through. It's fine. Let's just become who we are and let's be a team, right? Like, but again, setting the stage for that is for me, is critical at the beginning of setting up a team or when you come into a team, to be able to get the best out of them. Because if they keep on, let's say, not showing up as they are, that's gonna be in the back of the head most of the time. So Carlos bringing up the being on camera situation, I think that is very much a good segue to talk about showing empathy.
Yeah, Mariano, I would like to jump in on that. Everyone, this is Tunde. I remember about 12 years ago, I was doing a speaking engagement for Toastmaster, and I was on the stage, and I told them, I said, hey, look at chapter 3 of this book. This chapter is really life-changing. And everybody said, what? I said, look at chapter 3, of this book. This book will be life-changing. They say, chapter what? and I holler on a mic, look at chapter 3. Someone, I grew up in Jamaica. In Jamaica, the word number 3 and tree, we pronounce it tree. But when we speak to one another, we understand one another exactly what we meant. So somebody came to me after my speaking engagement because I felt like I let my crew down. And they said, listen, Tunde, a lot of people are not culturally sensitive, but in another platform, perhaps you might want to say 3. Learn to enunciate the H. And that really helped me. Every single time I'm saying the number 3, the number 3, I have to remind myself to enunciate the H. So cultural sensitivity, showing empathy to the way people, speak, and you can coach them one-on-one. Everyone can be a coach.
I think it takes the other side of that a little bit, though, to where when you go into a new team, you have to recognize that it's a new team and it's not going to have the same norms as you had before. And especially when you introduce several cultures, you're going to have to combine cultural norms too. There isn't one cultural norm that is the right way. So making sure that the team doesn't automatically assume that one person's right way is everyone else's right way, and kind of coaching with the team and one-on-ones to get there.
I think that's also an excellent reason to use team working agreements as well, because you can establish for the team, okay, we all have different backgrounds, we all have different experiences, but how do we as a team want to work together?
And somebody's
Justin,
asking, sorry.
Lark, you had something, Justin? Yeah.
I was just continuing on the conversation, empathy I think what we're all saying is the individual members of a team, we're trying to show that we're accepting of you, right? Like the human nature that we want to feel accepted, and when that's recognized as you're part of a team, the effect that has on a person to want to contribute. Hey, I'm being recognized. My team recognizes my value that I contribute to the team. So the showing the empathy can drive that behavior out of team members. That's what I'm trying to say. Like that, the acceptance that evolves from it.
And we have
one more minute for this topic.
Okay,
go ahead.
I'm sorry, really quickly. Somebody's asking here: isn't language different than culture? Here on the chat.
Yeah.
Don't want to turn it into linguistics, but we have a question that just says, isn't language different than culture?
Anyone want to take that?
I think that language is encompassed within culture, and we can get into a whole linguistical argument here, but within culture, we do have that language, and all of many, and most of our many of our cues come from our language, and many of our agreements and disagreements come from our language, and what something means to you within your language, and when it's translated to my or somebody else's language, literally, it may not mean the same thing, and that's when the misunderstandings happen. So you have to be, if you're well versed in 2 different languages, you are very lucky. If not, those things have to be learned step by step, and hence that's why we have these things, so that we can understand each other better.
All right, we are past our time box. We're going to move on. However, the next topic somewhat ties into that in a way, so we could possibly continue that a bit there, but filter through the differences. So understand the difference between cultural differences and personalities, right? So it's not necessarily about language, but it is about, there are things that are different, beyond just the things that we normally think about. Who wants to take us there first?
All right, I'll go. Just to stay on track with what I've been doing. So when it comes to filtering through differences, for me, and again, the whole thing with cultural differences and managing this, for me, it always boils down to the very basics, which is, again, generating and creating that psychological safety, a safe space for people to be able to be who they are, come as you are, and again, be able to collaborate in a way that whether you speak this English, that kind of English with an accent, no accent. I have a significant accent. I'm originally from Argentina, so and people at times go like, "What did you say?" And times being able to filter through the differences means, for me particularly, just to be respectful of those nuances that I can speak with people with an accent all day. I get it. My wife, for example, and I don't want to talk too much about my wife because she might listen to this. My wife at times goes like, "What did you say?" And she cannot filter through my accent. Like she gets stuck over there. She doesn't focus on the content itself. She's focusing a lot on my accent per se. So when we're talking about filtering through differences, for me personally, is focusing a lot more in the content than what is being said instead of just the way that is being said. And I know that there's a whole topic about this that we're going to get into a different route probably later on. But for me, it's paying attention to the message and to the audience more so than the nuances. And to be able to do that, again, it's something that you need to do. It's a self-reflection, right? Like, am I doing the right thing? Am I paying attention to people for what they say? Am I just focusing on if me or anybody have a funny accent, or are we paying attention to the message that is being delivered? And that's just, again, a segue to probably a different topic. But for me is, we also come with personalities, right? And that's also something that we probably want to tune down to focus on the message. That's just what it means to me. I'm happy to pass it on.
And one important thing is that people speak with an accent. They don't think with an accent. So although the message is coming out with an accent, they're not thinking with it. So if you think about that statement, the message you may receive the message clearer because there is a content coming out. So just a nugget there for you.
I think one thing to be aware of too is that the differences in culture are not necessarily just national. I mean, there's a difference in culture between North and South Florida. There's a difference in culture, between two different sides of the same city. There's so many different cultural differences that we have to be aware of when we talk to each other. Especially, you don't want to say something that would be offensive to another culture, right? So it's something, it's very complicated. You just have to be careful.
And I think that brings in trust a lot too, because I know I've made the mistake a few times of saying things that are insensitive to other cultures without even realizing it, because they haven't been insensitive, during my lifetime and the people I've talked to until I talk to them. So having that open, trustworthy dialogue that they can say, wait a second, what did you say? Is really beneficial there.
And I think it goes both ways. I mean, you don't have to walk on eggshells. It's not about walking on eggshells, but it is about maybe even reading a little bit about the culture, taking a look about what the customs are, and just learning a little bit about the culture always helps.
Yeah, there's a great book that I used to reference when I was going to different places. It's called Kiss, Bow, or Shake Hands, and it's sort of like a cultural guide for people doing business in different countries. So if you're going to do business in Switzerland, what's important to know before going there, and you can read that chapter. It's really good, and maybe you would use it within your team if you're finding that there's a huge culture clash between different people, perhaps.
I was also thinking about there's a not really a situation, but a scenario that I encountered before while coaching. And basically the client thought that they attributed a particular behavior to a certain group. And, and so I observed and said, okay, well, I'm not gonna, jump to a conclusion, but I observed. And, once I came to my conclusion, it's not the group. That particular person is just a jerk. Like that, it's that person is not the group. So like don't attribute it, to the group. And so it wasn't a cultural thing. It was that particular person's personality that was just rubbing people the wrong way. And I think it's so important to be able to make that distinction so that, we don't, or, teams don't, attribute certain behaviors that are personality traits to a cultural difference when it's not actually a cultural difference.
It feels like that's how stereotypes get started off, right?
Yeah.
Wrong stereotypes that can be costly.
In this vein, also analogies are concerning too. My Brazilian team doesn't know who Pee Wee Herman is, which is something I used an analogy that everybody in the United States got. So keeping that in mind.
Yeah, you're maybe a couple of slides ahead of us, but we'll get there. But just as a reminder, we do want the input, but if you could, even with the comments, if you could add them into the chat, that would be appreciated. But thanks for the input. Yeah. All right, we're gonna move to the next topic. Be attentive to the audience. So we actually touched on this a little bit already, and we just had a comment that reflects on this as well around using cultural jokes or idioms if they don't resonate, and then listening through the accent. So I know for myself, listening through the accent is something that has helped me tremendously, similar to what Mariano referred to earlier, as far as really focusing in on the content and not on how the words sound, but on the words that are being said. And that has helped me with clients. It has helped me relate to teams, to be able to communicate better with teams. Just very, very helpful. What about anyone else?
Yeah, I know I spoke about this before, so my apologies. But one of the things that I've done just as an exercise myself, to get over, because I used to pay a lot of attention to that, was to repeat what the other person was saying. Particularly my teams they have a global footprint. So I have people with a Russian accent, South American, you name it. I just try to repeat exactly what they said, just to make sure that I got it right. And then if I have to, I ask clarifying questions if I need to, but it usually have helped me just to ask those questions.
Well, and the whole point of not using idioms that people don't understand. I mean, we use a lot of sports analogies in speaking, and people from other countries may not know what a touchdown or a home run are because they just don't play those sports, or a lot of people in the US may not get soccer references that the whole rest of the world would take for granted. So things like that, you have to be aware of how you speak as well.
And this hits home for me, especially, English is actually a second language for me. I mean, even though it may not sound like it, some folks are able to pick it up. But I was stumped recently from a idiom that's just based on where you live, right? So this was around a team of management folks, part of the team. And oh, Justin, it seems like you're reminding us to not be seagulls. So I got thrown off guard. What, so then they asked the next question to see if I'm getting it. What do seagulls do when they fly over, by the beach? I'm still stumped because I'm, even though I live near the beach, I know what seagulls are. It didn't quite come through me. So, so this idiom, but we all laughed afterwards, so I learned something from it. So, making it more, a moment to laugh is also helpful and it allows folks to get more comfortable and things like that. So seagulls, what they do is they come and they shit on your stuff and they leave, right? So basically telling managers to stop doing that.
And that's really important to understand that the things that that we take for granted and that we say to each other in the States absolutely make no sense in other countries. I'm trying just to think of any idioms that we use every day, like give me five. Well, that's very used, and so that's become very popular. Guys, give me any idioms. Go the extra mile. No, that's easy because. Yeah.
Well, yeah, but other countries don't use miles. So
What's that?
Go the extra kilometer.
Yeah. So
if you say vete el extra kilómetro, go there. No, it does mean nothing. I mean, nothing at all. So, that translation means nothing. It's like to do what? Why? Why do I have to go an extra kilometer? To do what? What do you want me to do?
Yeah, let me give another example. I went to college in Oklahoma. I remember my first year. I tried out for the American football team, and I got benched. And when I got benched, the guy that actually took the starting spot, he gave me the middle finger. And I got up, I gave him a hug. I said, thank you, because I really did not know any better. Because in my culture, I was born in Nigeria. The middle finger is the longest finger, supposedly. So if somebody give it to you, that means bless you. They are blessing you. Versus, the notion that they are thinking is to curse you. But in my culture, it is like blessing. However, when you give me a handshake and you raise your hand like this, that's actually the word, what the middle finger means. When you do this, it means the opposite in my culture. So those little idioms, if you don't know, ask. When you ask, you get more knowledge.
So I think earlier someone had referenced about New York. So it's really important to know that difference if you're driving in New York or working with Team New York. The middle finger is a different thing.
I think this goes actually past language, though. And you can consider this cultural, you cannot, but time zones and time changes and people's willingness to work with other people's time zones and time changes. I mean, being attentive to who's there, and if it's 10 o'clock at night for them, and they might have something that's normal in their culture that they like to do at that time. Probably not 10 o'clock at night, more like 5. That might be culturally dinner time for them, to where it's not necessarily for us or in our household.
All right, we are right at the time box. So we'll go ahead and move to the next topic. So clear is kind. Ask clarifying questions, don't assume. Ask questions when needed.
And that is very polite, very polite.
One of the things that stands out to me is being clear does not equate to speaking louder.
Yes.
And so often, people will, do that even within teams. Or, sometimes I was going to say even slowing down does not necessarily equate, but sometimes slowing down is actually helpful, to be able to understand words that you're not familiar with hearing that same way. But having that psychological safety, that we talked about earlier, and establishing within the team that we give each other permission to ask clarifying questions. We give each other permission to stop us and say, hey, I actually didn't understand what you just said. Could you maybe repeat it for me, or maybe explain it differently? And then being able to show that empathy, to be patient with that. What are your thoughts and experiences?
Raising your voice will not get you a clearer answer for sure. Asking to clarify it, asking it again, it will get you usually the question, or if you ask the question a different way, will get you the right answer. Or asking it slower, but not at a slower pace, like to make somebody feel like they may not get just a regular rhythm of language. That doesn't help. Just asking it again, and people will take it well. Like I said, people speak with an accent, but don't think with an accent. So then they'll hear it correctly. Again, just go ahead and ask it again, and they will understand it.
And to follow up on what you're saying, Carlos, I have somebody that taught me a long time ago that when you are seeking clarification on something, it might be helpful to rephrase the same question, but in a different way.
Exactly.
So, and you ask, hey, what I hear you say is X, Y, and Z. Instead of repeating exactly the ABC, just have a little twist in the language, just to make sure that you're not making an assumption in terms of, hey, I thought that you said this, by just repeating the exact same word that the other person said. So if you can change it up a little bit and you can clarify, hey, this is really the intent of what you're saying, right? Yes. Oh, okay, we're aligned. I think that also ultimately builds some intentional rapport in terms of like, hey, Justin, this is what I heard you said. Yes, no. Oh, no, you didn't. So then what? And increases the level of trust over time, just by nature. Because now I know that you have a true intent of understanding what I'm saying, and vice versa.
By the same token, those people that are speaking the second language, that clients are, let's say, from the States, do need to make the same effort to ask again, to not be shy of doing the same thing, of asking, saying, can you repeat that, please? Can you ask again? Can you clarify that question? Can you say that again? Can you ask that a different way? So it is on both of our parts, both sides. I mean that there has to be an effort on the side of the person whose language we are acclimating to. So that would be the person that's learning the language, and the person that is acclimating to the person that's new to the language. So those people that are new to the language also have to get that bashfulness away, have to leave that behind, and just get yourself out there and get exposed to the language just as well. So it's teamwork that we have to do. So that clarification goes both ways of answers, questions.
It's interesting as I hear, everyone's responses, and I think about what I believe it was Tina put in the chat earlier about people listening with their heart, using their heart, and so forth, and really just kind of assuming the best, and that makes it so much easier to get clarification, to ask clarifying questions, to to feel that it's okay to ask and feel that it's okay to be asked, at the same time. And attributing any of those questions in general, to goodwill and good intent. That, hey, there's no harm that anyone's trying to do here. It's only us trying to work together better as a team so that we're stronger as a team and ultimately we deliver better, as a team.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
All right, we are right at time on that topic. So just for the audience to know, one of the things we did, we had several topics that we had come up with. And so the topics that we just discussed were the ones that we saw as our top 5 that we wanted to ensure that we had time to get through. And then we said, well, if we get through those 5, then we'll just start going at the others, just one at a time. Which, by the way, this is Miro that we use, which is a tool that we use quite a bit at AgileThought and definitely within Innovate in the coaching practice. So I'll grab another here, and unless someone has one in particular that they want me to grab, that's not one of the check marks. Those are the ones we already discussed. So I'll grab this one here. Act as a mirror. This is the bottom center. Act as a mirror, pick up on nonverbal cues, focus on their style. Any input on that one from the panel? I know we had talked about the act as a mirror quite a bit as well.
Yeah, well, I mean, we can talk about picking up the nonverbal cues. I mean, we usually observe quite a bit, even if we're in video conference. That's why I enjoy Carl's comment about getting a video if we can during our team calls, is because you can pick who is engaged, who's not engaged, who is actually, and again, at times it might not be that they're distracted on purpose. It might be that, again, there are kids in the background or, whatever that might be. And you can start understanding the level of engagement. And it could be because, an array of different problems. And that's something that could be addressed at some point in time, whether it's during that same call or after the fact. But I think that picking up on nonverbal cues for engagement, displeasure, satisfaction, whatever that might look like, is super key for the kind of environments that we're in.
What about anyone else? And I have a great appreciation for nonverbal cues as well. Our primary mode as humans is nonverbal communication.
Stop me if I'm wrong, because this, or out of place with this question, because I'm not sure it's culture related, but how do we get people to turn on their cameras in places where that's not coming naturally to people? Is that, I mean, this is such an important thing.
So I can tell you things that I've done that have been, I think, pretty successful. One of which I will do things like suggest activities that we might do at the beginning of the call. So let me say, okay, at the very beginning, we're all going to show something that's unique to our home office, something that's like within distance that you can reach out and grab or something like that. And so in order to show it, guess what? Your camera has to be on. All right, so as everyone is showing it and then people are laughing about, what people are showing and, and so forth, then typically the cameras stay on and then we just continue. Something else that I've seen at a client, I didn't suggest this, but a team did it, and Erica may be able actually to remind me how it came about, but they would do like a hat day. And so everyone would come in with hats on, and they'll have like crazy hats or just different kinds of hats or whatever the case, but it encouraged everyone to turn the cameras on. And sure enough, that particular event, not event, but that particular event, Scrum event, that particular event was everyone's camera was always on, like every single time. But basically something that will cause people to show something that's not them, but a thing, something else.
Thanks.
I've also seen leading by example work. It depends on the team. Some people don't care if there's just one person on camera, but I've seen it work, and I was surprised when it worked, when someone was like, you know what, I'll get on camera today just because, you know, we're just staring at you. Let's stare at least one other person today. And I was like, oh, that's nice. So depends on the team.
Yeah. And to answer part of your question, Eric, I do think it's cultural, but I don't think it's cultural in terms of geography, demographics, that kind of thing. I think it's cultural within a company. Like this particular team has a culture of not turning their cameras on. That particular team has a culture of always turning their cameras on. So I do think it's cultural, but not in, you know, the way that we may.
Yeah, in a geographical way. I agree with that.
Yeah. All right, we can take on a different topic. All right, so that actually, there was one that said, what about cameras being on or off? So there you go. Let's see.
I think someone posted in the conversation about leading by example.
Do you want to dig into that one a little bit more?
Yeah, I will, just to bring in the conversation from the chat a little bit too, like leading by example and letting people know that it's okay to ask clarifying questions and do any of the rest of the stuff by leading by example can really bring people outside of their shell a little bit. So once you get one person to do it, then maybe a second person on the team does it, and it just kind of cascades.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to mention before we move on, Hal, and I think, I don't know if I'm pronouncing the name right, Hal had a great idea, which I've done about a year and a half ago when I was kicking a new team, which was to bring your pets. And, you know, everybody, for the most part, everybody has cats, dogs, or a bird. Well, I brought my chicken into the camera. I got 3 chicken. And everybody was like, oh my God, this guy that is like in a jacket and a shirt has chickens. And it was actually right before we kicked the retrospective. And then that was the whole point of the conversation. And everybody wanted to see the chickens. And I'm like, well, if you want to see the chickens again on the next event, you all need to turn the cameras on. And it became a thing. It was successful. Yeah.
That's great.
That's awesome.
I'm expecting you to bring your chicken to the next meeting.
I might. If everybody's on camera, I will.
All right, I'm going to post in the chat a link to the thing that's on the bottom right of the screen regarding Hofstede's cultural dimension. Might be something that the audience is interested in digging into. There's several dimensions they've defined that they measure different cultures on, and it sort of gives you a cue or a clue as to what to expect when dealing with different cultures. It's not something we can go into detail here now. But if you just are curious about it, you can click on the link and read about it.
And not to toot our own horn, there is also a podcast on this topic from AgileThought. So if you're wanting to listen into it, it's also there.
It's a great podcast.
Member of us on this call, we're on that podcast. Yep.
All right, so I think we have time for one more topic, and this one, top middle, which I think is a good one. Consider the holidays observed of other cultures are important too. And so with delivery teams, you know, in particular Agile teams, and, you know, this comes into capacity planning and, you know, everything, you know, you really need to factor that and consider that and see it as important. It's not just the Independence Day in your country when you have teams that are across, you know, different geographies. What are your thoughts on that?
It's not only the holiday itself. I I had somebody in a prior team that actually thought that Cinco de Mayo was widely celebrated in Mexico as a total holiday, right? Like the whole Mexico was shutting down. And I was like, that number one, that's an assumption that is not probably true. And then we had to explain that that was just a celebration of XYZ, but it was bigger here in the US than it's ever in Mexico, honestly. But then we went on to explaining the real holidays that they had in Mexico, and it brought a lot of alignment with the team. So for me, that is twofold. Number one is the assumptions that we have here. And number two is understanding the real holidays of a probably global, footprint team that you might have.
Yeah.
This goes back to showing empathy. We kind of skipped over the holidays, and honestly, religion too. I mean, depending on who you're working with, they might have some specific things, that happen throughout the day, even not even just on holidays, that having empathy for.
Yeah. What about anyone else around the holidays?
You got to take them into account in sprint planning and so forth. I mean, if you're working with a Chinese team, they're off for a week, for the Chinese New Year's, things like that. You need to be respectful of people's time off.
Yeah.
Probably something to ask about or have open communication about up front or as much as possible. Because that's something, like if I worked with a Chinese team, I'd have no idea until it snuck up on me. And then you're in trouble.
So what I'm about to say is not a holiday, but it's something that I have consistently see teams, clients overlook, and that's spring break. So in the US, especially in the South, spring break is a big thing. But it doesn't occur on the same week for everyone, so it's something, I think that has to be or should be considered and factored because it's part of the culture, taking time out for spring break, kids being out for spring break, people doing things for spring break, that's part of the culture. And again, like I said, definitely in the South, I'm sure it is. I would assume in the North. I've never lived in the North, so I don't know. But pretty much I kind of assume if the closer you get to a nice beach, the more spring break is a thing.
I'd say they have similar things like that in other cultures, though, like you're saying, to keep aware of. I think I was learning French culture tends to take off, July or August. So keeping in mind if you're working with people in France, often that they're probably going to be gone for a whole month that are around one of those too. And that's going to impede if you need them.
Or a 2-hour lunch break.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I see in the chat, Dan, it's first day of hunting season. Oh, man. All right. Well, we are just a few minutes before we are at our end here. So we will actually stop here as far as our topics for today. You can always go to AgileThought.com and search our library for past events. All of those events are out there, including this event will be out there probably within the next day or so. So those things will be available. And lastly, if you are interested in connecting with any of our panelists, you can actually use your mobile app for LinkedIn. And if you do the QR code, the scan, you can scan everyone's QR code and it will pretty much instantly find them, and you can connect with anyone that's on the panel whose QR code is up here. So again, thanks for joining Agile Thought. We always appreciate everyone coming and the participation. Thanks for your participation in the chat and your questions. We hope this has been of value to you and beneficial, and we hope that you enjoy the rest of your day. I'll leave the QR codes up, but even if you watch the recording, I mean, again, you can still do it then as well if you want to connect with folks. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks. Enjoyed it.